Kia ora, Kiwi Codger here, and welcome to episode 52. Now, this is not part of the Musket Wars, but it's a journey I've been on in conjunction with one of my subscribers, Justin Smith. In August 2021, Justin came across my YouTube channel and left interesting comments. And then he must have dug deeper and found my kiwicodger@gmail.com email address and sent me an email introducing himself. He's an interesting guy, a Pākehā but fluent in te reo. He's worked with Mother Teresa and lived with the Maori Queen and moves easily within the Pākehā and Maori worlds. Justin is a very passionate and lovable guy, so our exchanges of emails was very enjoyable, and he and his wife Ngawai have helped with my Maori pronunciation, which definitely needed some work. In one of his early emails, Justin threw out a well-baited hook with the following statement. Do you know where the actual island of Hawaiiki is, that New Zealand Maori left from to come here? My wife Ngawai and I have been there 4 times to the island of Hawaiiki, Fakarava, in the Tuamaotu Islands beyond Tahiti. Fascinating stuff that so many still know nothing about. Well, of course I hadn't heard this before. I don't know anyone who has. So I sent a follow-up email and Justin sent more information. It was intriguing. I'm a scientific sort of guy, and I had trouble wrapping my mind around the possibility that Justin, a Pākehā from Northland, had uncovered the Hawaiiki that Maori had left to migrate to Aotearoa. I mean, what are the odds? Near zero, surely. But stranger things have happened. So, join me, Justin and Ngawai, as we take you on a journey. Kia ora, Justin. Great to have you here. Now, you mentioned speaking about the origins of New Zealand Māori with Professor James Ritchie many years ago. So, tell me a bit about that.
Oh, kia ora, Papakiwi, and kura ora from the Tuamaotu Islands. Yes, look, I travelled all the way around overland around the world, and then I returned to Waikato University to train to be a teacher. And Professor Jim Ritchie was my lecturer in Polynesian Studies. And I already knew that there was a number of different Hawaiiki, the sort of ancestral homelands that ancestors departed from. I knew that, like Savai'i in Samoa was one, Raiatea or Raiatea in Tahiti was another, and that Mangaia in the Cook Islands was one. But I asked Professor, the question, I said, yeah, but so where did New Zealand Māori actually come from? And he said, as far as they could determine, from the islands beyond Tahiti. And then that sowed a seed of fascination for me.
And that was the reason why you went there?
Yes, the first time I went there was on a 21-day cruise that I went on with my mum and my wife Ngawai and our children. And that took us through basically all the different Polynesian islands. But especially it took us for the first time to Tahiti, to Moorea, and to Raiatea.
Now, if I remember rightly, Raiatea was a bit of an eye-opener.
Yeah, doors certainly opened up there big time. On Raiatea is Taputapuatea marae that really I didn't know much about, but it is the centre of Polynesian travelling. It's where reportedly every canoe that went somewhere went there first to offer karakia and they said to offer human sacrifice to bring mana to their trip. But when I was there, I asked one of the old kuia there that was a guide, and I said to her, "No konei ngai Māori no Aotearoa, is New Zealand Māori from here?" And she said with an adamance, "Eka, no, they're from the Tuamaotu and the Marquesas Islands." And she also said that if I was to go there, I'd find that my language was the same as hers, that the culture was the same and the carvings. And she was 100% correct.
So you organised to go there.
Yes, well, the next year, I arranged a trip with Ngawai and I to go through from Tahiti through the Tuamaotu Island archipelago and go to the Marquesan Islands. Now, if you look at it, like Cook Island and Tahitian Māori are similar to New Zealand Māori, but actually they're quite different. But when we got off on the ship, the first Tuamaotu Island called Takapoto, the language was exactly the same. And suddenly we could talk fluently with the local people, which was exciting. And they said something really interesting. They gave us a big hug and said, New Zealand Māori and us, we are closer than cousins. And they asked us to tell that to New Zealand Māori, and hence why I'm here.
I'm very pleased to be part of your journey in this too. So tell me about, there's a fascinating thing about your meeting a Savai'i.
Yes, we were on the cruise ship and we'd gone through the Tuamaotu and arrived in the Marquesan Islands, and we went to an island called Uapau. And we were in a grocery shop. We left all the other tourists behind. And I was speaking Māori with Ngawai. And suddenly the shopkeeper, the owner, came out from around the back and looked with a big surprised face and saw, oh, this is not a French guy. This is like a Pākehā. But he said that, how come I was speaking his language? And he was Savai'i, and he was from the island of Anā in the Tuamaotu. And we quickly became friends and made that connection. And he said, look, I want you to return one day and come to my island of Anā. That was gold.
Amazing. Tell me about you taking up that offer, his offer.
Well, Savai'i's knowledge and his family connections just opened up seeds. Now, the Tuamaotu Islands are just not set up for tourists at all that we came across. To get there, you've got to travel on a local cargo ship that's delivering produce to these little individual islands, and they pick up their copra. But really the reality is you travel on deck class. You really have to look after yourself. Unless, like for me, I'm lucky I'm a captain and I could bond and get some privilege. But you've got to be able to get it loaded off a crane onto a rocking barge from a ship that can get across the coral atoll to drop off the supplies. So I can see quite quickly why I was learning things there that researchers probably wouldn't be able to get there unless they could tolerate, which explains a lot, because like there's no wash there, but Ngawai and I loved it.
So it was on this last trip that you had that serendipitous meeting with the historian on Katiu and learned more about the islands of Hawaiiki.
Yes, the contact with Savai'i really opened up doors through his connections, and we were treated like royalty. And when we went through Anā to another island, when we got off the island of Katiu, which is near to Fakarava, and we'd been there before, but we got invited to breakfast with the mayor. So he didn't speak English and my French wasn't very good. But in the conversation of togetherness, I asked about the local history and was really blessed, because through that, on the way back to the cargo boat, they took us to a local historian, and her name was Te Utanga. Magic. She knew stuff that we'd never heard of. She told us things about these different canoes. She told us about the different Hawaiiki. Doors opened up. She also said that her ancestors left there, showed us, to go to a place called Ruterangi.
Ruterangi. What's Ruterangi?
Te Utanga explained that Ruterangi is their word for what New Zealand Māori now call Aotearoa. She said that was their name for it, and it still is their name before it got changed later on when Kupe followed.
What does Ruterangi mean?
Well, if I was interpreting Ruterangi, shaking, te rangi, that in this image. The whole sky is reverberating and shaking. So to me, in my imagination, I see these sophisticated ocean travelers coming here and discovering this island that's different from their low-lying coral atolls, but seeing volcanoes probably maybe for the first time in full display, where the whole sky would have been shaking, reverberating. So to me, it could be a very apt description of what was happening at Rangitoto 700 odd years ago.
Okay, look, you had the very good peace of mind in order to do some recording of this interview, which let's play a clip from that right now.
Rātou e ako tōnu ana no he rātou, kei konei ngā ingoa o ngā waka, I puta mai, I puta atu mai ki konei mai I ngā motu o ngā tuamotu, tai atu ka Aotearoa. Koe rātou? Kora mai ngā ingoa? Takitumu. Mata atua. Kurahaupo. Te Rauwha. Tai nui hoots. Te Raiatea. Tēnā koutou. Ngā tuakana, ne? Ko koutou ngā tuakana? I puta atu ki tingo ngā waka I haere atu ki Ruterangi.
Ruterangi, hare mai nā Ruterangi.
I knew a girl whose name is Tuakana I Ekitaki.
Rawe, he tapu I enei motu. Havaiki? Enei?
Ai,
Havaiki, Fakarava.
Fakarava.
Tuamaotu, Havaiki. Havaiki runga. Havaiki raro. Raiatea.
Havaiki raro.
Havaiki tautau. Tupuatea. Tuhape. Austral wala.
Archipel des Australes.
Havaiki tautau atu se Rarotonga. Havaiki nui anaia.
Cook Island.
Aotearoa.
Ko Havaiki nui?
Anaia. E paumotu tera. Te paumotu tera e pariparira. Whaatara. Tō rātou harehanga. I parauhi ai e Havaiki. Havaiki I runga o Fakarava.
En kei konei he mahere o ngā motu. Kei konei ngā motu o Tūhoi, Matātua, hoki ko Ngapuhi, Fakarava, kei kene ana parata, ngā tino toa o ngā motu I nei puta atu ki Aotearoa. Tēnā koutou katoa, mauri ora.
Ruterangi, Aotearoa, same name.
Rite tonu ngā ingoa.
Ruterangi.
Is the
Ingoa o te Aotearoa.
Ruterangi.
Ruterangi, New Zealand mena.
New Zealand.
Okay.
Me Ruterangi ho e.
Te ingoa tūturu.
Uturu.
Wow.
I kora mai rātou ko te tangata tuatahi ki Aotearoa ko kupe. Ko rongo koe ki a kupe? He rangatira kupe. Ka mata...
So you could see in the video that we could speak the same language. And although she spoke French and not English, there was some confusion in the words that we read maybe for the first time. Now, the book she was showing us was her father's written records in his language, and he was also a historian. Now, the first thing that stood out was that I recognized each of those 7 waka that she said left from there. So the words at the top say, you know, ngā waka e whitu I airi atu ki Ruterangi, which means, you know, here's the 7 of our canoes that left to go to this place called Ruterangi.
Now, halfway through, you ask her about Hawaiiki, and she lists these Hawaiikis, which is in the list below. But the one that the canoes left from for New Zealand was Hawaiiki runga, which is Fakarava, right?
Yeah, so one thing that made a difference was that on the ship, I came across this book that was actually in French, but it had the names of all the 70 Tuamaotu islands, and beside it was the ancient names. So right beside Fakarava was the name Havaiki. Boom.
So that confirmed exactly what she said in the clip. Now, near the end of the clip, you asked Tuamaotu about Kupe, but she doesn't seem to have heard of him. So where did Kupe leave from to come to New Zealand?
Right, because that was interesting to us. Like I knew that all the Polynesian migration canoes, they would have left, as she said, they left, Havaiki, and they went to Raiatea, and then they headed off. But she doesn't seem to recognize who Kupe was at all. And my present understanding is that the manaho is right, Scotty Morrison, that he's actually from the Tahitian Islands. And what we do know is that there was a canoe before him that came that was called Paui Raira. And the rangatira on that, Rakatauda, they said, went back on his way, went back up to the Tahitian Islands and talked and gave them the star path to get there. And to me, that's a fascinating piece of something as we uncover as we go forward.
Interesting stuff. Look, on the Tuamaotu island of Ana, you visited the school and had an interesting conversation with the principal. So let's play that clip.
The first Ngati Ana is Te Manawa in the south of the island. The second in the west, Tutawake, and here in the main village, Tangihia.
Tangihia. And is that connected to Aotearoa?
Yes, we have a connection because in the past one of our waka were lost in the ocean, and we don't hear about from centuries and centuries. And in 2005 we went in Rotorua and we discovered our ancestor in Rotorua. Ngati Tangihia, Ngati Tuhue I Rotorua.
So in that clip, Jean-Pierre is saying that when he came to New Zealand and he went to Rotorua, what was astounding that he found the Te Arawa Hapu of Ngati Tangihia, which is the same name as the main Ngati on his island of Ana called Ngātangihia.
You also discovered a similar Vaka connection on the island of Amanu, and you recorded that on a clip. So we'll just play that clip as well.
So again, so where is Takitumu from?
Takitumu from Amanu.
Amanu, from this island. Oh, this is the great chief here.
Takitumu is ariki.
Yeah.
Aito the king.
Aito the king.
Come here.
And Matatua? Tainui?
Go away. The party on New Zealand se kasi.
Go to New Zealand. Go to.
Yeah. Tainui? Tainui waka?
Not from here.
But Takitumu.
So Takitumu waka is the waka that Ngāti Kahungungu descend from in Aotearoa. And there on Amanu, but I'm actually searching for Tainui or Matatu, the locals say with adamance, our ancestor, our toa was Takitumu, our village is Takitumu, our ancestral canoe is Takitumu, we are Takitumu.
What I find interesting is that each group of islands in the Tuamaotu archipelago seem to only know the history of its own group.
Yes, it is fascinating and something I want to uncover more of, because if you look at the Tuamaotu archipelago, it's divided up into different sects of islands or different groups that actually share the same dialect of Paumotu, the Tuamaotu Māori. And it seemed that they knew their own whakapapa and they knew their own histories, and they were proud of that, but that doesn't mean that they knew others' histories.
Now, you've told me about the dialects of the Tuamaotu groups and the New Zealand Maori dialect groups, but that's going to need more time, mate. So let's finish off here and leave that for the next episode.
Pai tēnā, as they say in there, tūro Havaiki.
Thank you very much for that, Justin. We'll call it quits there, and we'll come back with a second episode 53. But until then, take it easy, stay safe out there. Hei kona. Catch you later.